If you live in Calimesa, this episode is for you. If you've ever wondered what the city is doing, why things take time, how decisions get made, or where we're headed next, this episode is for you. And if you've ever cared enough to attend an event, volunteer, stop me in public to ask a question, comment online, or simply tell a neighbor, hey, I heard the city is doing something about that, this episode is for you too. Because this past year was a big year. Not perfect, not always easy, but big. Calimesa turned 35 years old as an incorporated city, and 35 years isn't just a number. It represents thousands of small choices and big choices made by people who cared enough to show up and do the work. Sometimes quietly, sometimes publicly, sometimes under pressure. And at the same time, this podcast has become part of how we talk to each other as a community. So today, I want to slow down. I want to look back. I want to celebrate what deserves celebration, be honest about what deserves honesty, and talk about what we're building towards. This is Calimesa, 35 years strong.
Welcome to the Calimesa Insider Podcast, the official podcast of the City of Calimesa. Join City Manager Will Kolbow as he takes you behind the scenes of city projects, community stories, and the future of our hometown. Stay informed, stay connected. This is the Calimesa Insider Podcast.
Hello again, everybody. Happy Boxing Day, and I hope you had a great Christmas yesterday. Welcome to the final episode of 2025 of the Calimesa Insider Podcast. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. I appreciate you making time for this. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm glad you found your way to this episode. Today's episode is a little different than our typical episodes. Usually, we pick a topic like property taxes, road funding, development updates, or a big project, and we go deep. Or we bring on a guest and have a conversation that helps people understand what's happening behind the scenes. This time, we're doing a year in review. And I want to be really clear about what I mean by that. This isn't a highlight reel that pretends everything is perfect. It's also not a complaints session. This is a real reflection on what happened this year in Calimesa, what we celebrated, what we worked through, what we learned, what we improved, and what's still in progress. I'm going to do this in primarily my voice because I want it to feel personal and conversational, like we're sitting across the table having a long talk about where we've been and where we're going. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to talk about the community moments, events and gatherings that brought people together. We're going to talk about staff and culture because city work is done by human beings, and that matters. We're going to talk about major milestones, things like public safety, fiscal health, new tools and systems, business openings, and some of the bigger decisions we made. We'll talk about infrastructure because, yes, County Line Road is going to make an appearance in this episode. It has to. We'll talk about policy and statewide impact, especially AB 1476, and what that means for our seniors. We'll talk about what we covered on the podcast this year and why that matters. We'll talk about development carefully and clearly. And then we'll look ahead to 2026 and beyond with a realistic view of timelines and dependencies. All right, let's get started with the easy part, and that is our celebrations. One of the biggest measures of a community's health is whether people feel connected. Do people know their neighbors? Do families have places to gather? Do we create moments that are simply good? Because a city isn't defined by projects and budgets. A city is defined by the everyday experience of living there. This year, we had a lot of those moments. We started with the Easter egg hunt. And I know some people may hear that and think, okay, that's cute, that's small. But when you watch families show up and you see kids running across the field with that pure kind of happiness that only kids have, you see parents and grandparents taking pictures and laughing, you realize those moments matter. We celebrated Earth Day, we did popsicles in the park, and then summer came, and with it, the Friday Food Roundup, 8 Fridays in July and August. And I want to pause on that because those nights were special. There's something about, a warm summer evening where families don't have to plan anything complicated, you don't have to dress up. You don't have to buy tickets. You just show up and you get something to eat. Kids run around, people talk, people reconnect. And those events, again, don't happen by accident. They happen because staff plans them. They coordinate vendors, they coordinate logistics, they handle everything from permits to safety to setup to cleanup. And it's worth saying out loud, that is real work. And it's done because it's good for the community. We also had the Calimesa 35th anniversary celebration, which included plenty of drops in the dunk tank for yours truly. 35 years of incorporation. And I want to reflect on that for a moment, because when a city reaches an anniversary like that, it gives you a rare opportunity. You get to look back and say, who were we 35 years ago? What did people hope this city would become? What worked? What didn't? What did we learn? And then you look forward and ask, what kind of city do we want to be in the next 35 years? So that's not just symbolic, that's practical, because every decision we make about roads, zoning, budgets, services, it's all about shaping the future. We held our State of the City, for which we did a special episode of the podcast. We hosted a spay and neuter clinic. We had our Halloween trunk or treat, which every year I'm reminded is one of those events where the community just shows up with energy, and it's always great. And then we closed the year with the Christmas tree lighting. The Christmas parade and the holiday market. And one of the community moments that stood out for me was the Calimesa Fire Department's participation in the Girls Empowerment Camp back in March. Those moments matter because they show young people that public safety isn't some distant institution. It's real people, it's mentorship, it's encouragement, it's community. So when you look back at the year, I see a city that gathered a lot, and that matters more than most people realize. So now let's talk about what happens behind the scenes. Because if you only follow cities through meeting agendas and headlines, you miss something important. Cities run on people, and people need culture, belonging, morale, and a little bit of fun sometimes. And this year we did have plenty of that. A bit of a tradition has started around here, pranking the city manager. Staff took a group picture in my office, crammed in, because that's how City Hall is sometimes. More on that later, by the way. Google AIs were put on my pictures, my stapler, even my office phone. My office earlier this month got wrapped. We had an Offices on Fire Instagram post. We had a J.C. Penney photo shoot with Public Works and the front office staff, an image I never thought I'd see, and yet it was perfect. We did a Public Works Week lunch. We did a Christmas employee lunch just a couple of weeks ago. Paid for, by the way, out of Darlene and mine's pocket, not the city. We acknowledged Mental Health Awareness Month by dousing me in cold water.
I'm Will Kolbow, City Manager for the City of Calimesa. I was challenged by Mike Polos, the town manager of Plainville, Connecticut, to step up and take the Ice Bucket Challenge, but not just for the chill. I'm doing it to recognize Mental Health Awareness Month and to remind everyone how important it is to take care of our mental well-being. Whether it's talking to a friend, taking a break, or asking for help, mental health matters. And it's okay to not be okay. The more we talk about it, the more we break the stigma. So today, I'm taking the pledge to show my support and to challenge you to do the same thing. I'm officially calling out a couple of heavy hitters, Sam Tolles and Joe Turner, and anyone else ready to raise awareness and make a splash for mental health. So let's do this for mental health, for Calimesa, for each other.
Yes. We had City Hall action figures, which I'm pretty sure who came up with that idea, and I will tell you, it was fantastic. We did April Fool's Day on Instagram. Our public works crew participated in the IE Equipment Rodeo. These things might sound silly, and they are a little bit, and that's the point, because city staff are working extremely hard year-round. They're handling public questions and complaints, they're managing contractors, they're dealing with negotiations and deadlines, they're responding to emergencies, they're processing permits, doing finance, public works, public safety coordination, administration, planning. If you don't create a culture where people can breathe sometimes, you burn them out. So I'm proud that we made room for a little levity because the work is serious, but the people doing it deserve to be treated like people. Now, the year wasn't all light and celebratory. It never is. We started the year dealing with the Southern California Edison PSPS power outages in January. And every time we go through something like that, it reinforces a few truths. One, our region is increasingly affected by conditions that make shutoffs more likely. Wind events, fire risk, grid conditions. Two, even when decisions are made outside of City Hall, the impacts land here on our residents, on our businesses, on families. And three, resiliency is not a buzzword. It's a real priority. It affects how we think about emergency operation. It affects how we think about communications, how we think about public safety coordination. It affects how we think about infrastructure investments. And it's one more reason that local government matters, because when things happen, people look to us first. They want answers. They want support. They want a plan. So PSPS was a part of the year, and it's something we continue to learn from and plan around. Now let's talk about something that I think is quietly one of the most meaningful changes we made this year. We launched the OpenGov online permit portal. Now, that may not sound exciting unless you've ever tried to pull a permit the old-fashioned way. And I don't say that as a criticism of the past. It's just reality. Many cities, including ours, have historically done things in ways that were not designed for modern expectations. People want to be able to submit things online. They want to track status. They want transparency, convenience. They want to do things outside of business hours. And when a city can make it easier for residents and businesses to interact with us, that's real progress. Because modernization isn't just about flashy projects. Sometimes it's about taking friction out of everyday interactions. So that's a win, and it's one of those changes that will keep paying dividends long down the road. Now let's talk about something that I know can sound dry, but it's actually one of the most important things we can do as a city, and that's fiscal health. We adopted another balanced budget. And I want to pause on that because a balanced budget doesn't mean we have unlimited money. It doesn't even mean that everything everyone wants we're doing those things. It means we're living within our means. It means we're planning. We're not putting ourselves in a position where we have to make emergency cuts later. It means we're trying to be responsible stewards of public funds. This year, we also received an A rating for overall fiscal health. And I want to say this very carefully. The rating is not about bragging rights. It's about capacity. Fiscal health determines what a city can and can't do. It determines whether we can respond to emergencies. It determines whether we can maintain infrastructure, whether we can match grants, hire and retain staff, invest in equipment, support programs. When you have fiscal instability, everything gets harder. When you have fiscal discipline, you create options. And if you listen to this podcast over the year, you know we've talked about taxes, revenue structures, and the realities of what cities receive versus what people think cities receive. So when I say A rating and balanced budget, what I really mean is we are protecting the city's ability to serve. That's the point. So this year, we entered into our first memorandum of understanding with the Calimesa Professional Firefighters Association, and I want to explain why that matters. Labor relationships are a major part of local government, but for cities, especially smaller cities, the systems and structures around those relationships can evolve over time. Entering into an MOU brings clarity. It sets expectations. It creates a framework. It helps both sides, both the employees in the organization, understand the rules of the road. And it also reflects a level of organizational maturity. It's a city acknowledging that labor relations are not ad hoc. They are part of long-term governance. I had the experience with labor negotiations in my previous city, and so I understand the value of those clear frameworks. So this was an important milestone for Calimesa. Now let's talk about one of the biggest public safety accomplishments for the year. The Calimesa Fire Department received an ISO Class 2 rating. That is a major achievement, and I want to unpack what that means in plain language. ISO ratings are essentially a measure of a fire department's ability and overall capability and overall fire protection infrastructure. They take into account staffing, training, equipment, water supply systems, including hydrants, flow, and distribution, dispatch, and response capacity. And when you reach a Class 2 rating, you are in a very high tier nationally. That's something our residents should be proud of. It's something that can have broader impacts, like insurance-related considerations in some contexts, depending on policies and how insurers use these ratings. But even beyond that, it's a signal of excellence. It means the people serving our community are doing it at a very high level. And I want to say this, public safety achievements like that are earned. They're not handed out. So congratulations to the fire department, and thank you for the work that led to this. We had new major business openings this year. Happy Mediums opened at Crown Village. Wendy's opened at the Stater Brothers Shopping Center on Calimesa Boulevard. And I want to say something about business openings. Sometimes people judge a city's economic health by what's new. And that can be a little simplistic because economic development isn't only about opening announcements. It's about long-term strategy and land use and infrastructure and market realities. But business openings do matter. They represent investment, confidence, services that residents want, and local jobs. And they contribute in different ways to the city's economic ecosystem. So those are wins. We also celebrated the grand opening of the new Calimesa Library. Libraries are one of those institutions that, when they're strong, they quietly improve everything. They support kids, they support students, they support job seekers, seniors. They provide access to information and technology. They provide space for learning and community. And a new library is not just a building, it's an investment in the future. So I'm glad we got to celebrate that this year. Now, I want to talk about something that is a major milestone for Calimesa, and it's the first time I'm discussing it on the podcast. The city is in escrow to purchase the former Bank of America building for a future city hall. Escrow is expected to close in January once we receive the fully executed purchase and sale agreement and finalize the remaining steps. The purchase price is $1,985,000. Now, I want to address something head on because I know how these things can be perceived. When people hear city hall purchase, some people immediately think wasteful. Some people think bureaucracy. Some people wonder why the city would spend money on a building at all, or why not spend that money on roads. So let me explain the rationale in a way that's grounded in facts and focused on service. For 35 years, Calimesa has operated out of modular buildings that were never intended to serve as a permanent city hall. As the city has grown, the lack of space has become one of the biggest constraints on how we serve the public and how we plan for the future. And it's important to understand this purchase is being funded entirely through general government facilities development impact fees. These are restricted dollars. By law, they can only be used for capital facilities like City Hall. They cannot be used for salaries, programs, parks, police staffing, day-to-day operations, and no, it cannot be used on roads. This purchase does not affect the general fund nor any sources available for road funding. A future city hall is not about luxury. It's about function. It's about giving staff the space they need to work efficiently. It's about serving the public comfortably. It's about having a proper council chamber designed for public meetings and civic engagement. And it's about building long-term organizational capacity so the city can grow responsibly over time. Cities are judged not only by what they build, but how well they provide services. This purchase is part of improving that service. And as we move from escrow towards designing and renovation, we'll continue to communicate clearly about what that means, what it costs, and how it benefits the community. Now let's talk about something I am genuinely proud of because it shows what a small city can do when it advocates for its residents. AB 1476. This legislation relates to senior meal programs. Now here's the story in plain terms. This bill originated from a letter that I wrote to several legislators raising concerns on our behalf of our senior community. Assemblymember Greg Wallace took up the cause. And I testified at California Assembly Committee on Aging and Long-Term Care alongside Assemblymember Wallace. So when I say Calimesa was involved, I don't mean we signed onto a letter at the end. I mean, we initiated the conversation. We pushed it forward. We showed up. And that work contributed to actual legislation being passed, unanimously, by the way. That's not something that happens every day for a city our size. And it's a reminder that local government is not powerless. When we advocate effectively, we can influence policy. And when that policy supports seniors, people that have spent their lives building communities, then it's worth the effort. So this year, we also recognize members of our community, people who contributed to Calimesa in meaningful ways. Community recognition isn't about just symbolic. It's a way of reinforcing what we value. It's a way of saying, we see you, we appreciate you, you matter to this community. And this year, we recognized Walt Pyle and Colonel Joseph Perilla. Calimesa is built by people like that, people who invest time, service, leadership, and heart. So I'm glad we took the time to honor them. All right, let's talk about County Line Road, because I know this is a project that has probably generated more frustration, more comments, more questions, and more emotional energy than anything else this year. And if you listen to the podcast, you know we didn't hide from it. We talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We talked about the delays. We talked about the impacts. We talked about the construction realities. We talked about why it mattered. Here's where we are now. The County Line Road project is functionally complete for the primary segment that people have experienced as the project. The pavement is done. The improvements are in place. The speed bump on Bryant is gone. The driver experience is dramatically better, except if you don't like roundabouts, but the statistics don't agree with you. There is one remaining segment between Calimesa Boulevard and Park Avenue where a storm drain will be installed, and because of that, half of that segment did not get repaved. That remaining storm drain work is expected to start in the first quarter of 2026 if all goes according to plan. So when I say done, I'm not pretending every last detail is finished. What I'm saying is the main project is complete, and the remaining work is a defined and limited segment with a clear purpose. And I want to acknowledge something here. Residents didn't imagine the frustration. Businesses didn't imagine the impacts. And staff didn't imagine the workload. This was all real. And it's okay to say it was hard. But it's also okay to say we got through it. And the end result is better infrastructure. Now, I know that doesn't erase the pain of the process, but it does matter. And as we talk about future infrastructure projects, County Line Road becomes a learning experience about communication, expectations, contractor realities, and how we navigate inevitable disruptions. We also completed a second round of pavement management in neighborhood streets in the spring. This is one of those things that doesn't always get a lot of attention because it's not a single giant project, but it does matter because people experience the city most often on the streets they drive every day. The street in front of your house matters. The road you take to school matters. The road to the grocery store matters. Pavement management is not glamorous. It's not exciting, but it is one of the most basic responsibilities of local government. So I want to acknowledge that work. So this year we adopted a new community grant program to replace the previous program, and I want to explain that. Over time, many cities drift into patterns where the same organizations get funded year after year without clear criteria, without strong oversight, and without transparency about outcomes. That's just not healthy. A grant program should be fair. It should be transparent. It should have criteria, accountability. So adopting a new community grant program was about fairness and trust. It was about making sure public funds are used in a way that reflects community benefit, not inertia. We also established a new partnership with Cosmont for economic development services. Economic development is one of those areas where there's a lot of misconceptions. Some people think a city can simply choose to have more restaurants. Some people think a city can force a developer to build exactly what residents want. And some people think a city can just wave a magic wand and create a downtown. The reality is more complicated than that. Economic development is shaped by market conditions. It's shaped by land use, infrastructure, regional competition, by consumer patterns, by ownership. And it's shaped by investment cycles. Partnering with an economic development firm helps us be more strategic and more realistic. It helps us communicate clearly. It positions the city to take advantage of opportunities when they come. And it helps us address misconceptions in a constructive way, because I'd rather correct a misconception with facts than let the frustration build in a vacuum. Now let's talk about the podcast itself, because part of this year in review is not just about what happened in the city, it's about how we talk about it. The Calimesa Insider podcast exists for a simple reason. City government is complicated, but residents deserve to understand it. And traditional communication channels, agendas, staff reports, short social media posts often don't create enough space to explain things clearly. A podcast gives us time. It gives us context. It gives us the ability to explain not just what we're doing, but why. And this year, we used that space. We provided comprehensive development updates. We educated the public on taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, and how revenue flows through different levels of government. We talked about conflicts of interest and the Brown Act. We brought on guests, people like Darlene Gerdes, Councilmember Eric Cundiff, our public works leaders, Mari Shakir and Kyle Coney, the founder of the UCal Generals, Mark Gallo, and WRCOG's Deputy Executive Director, Chris Gray. We talked about County Line Road. Again, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We did a history of Calimesa in our big episode 50 milestone. We talked about road funding. We talked about the Caltrans Complex QMAP process, especially as it relates to the Cherry Valley Boulevard interchange. We talked about economic development realities. The goal was never to make everyone agree. The goal was to make sure everyone had access to the same baseline facts, because informed disagreement is healthy. Uninformed outrage is not. Let me briefly revisit the tax conversation, because it's one of those topics that really matters and tends to be misunderstood. When people pay taxes, it's natural to think, I pay a lot, so the city must have a lot. But that's not how it works. Property taxes are divided across multiple agencies. Sales taxes are shared and distributed through formulas. A significant portion of what people pay does not go to the city at all. It goes to the state, the county, school districts, other entities. So when people say, why can't the city just pay for this? Or why can't the city just build that? Part of the answer is that cities are not the primary collectors of many of the taxes people pay associated with local life. Cities are responsible for a lot, but cities do not control the full tax stream people assume we do. That's why fiscal health matters so much, and that's why balanced budgets matter. And that's why matching matters so much. And that's why long-term planning matters so much. Because if you misunderstand the revenue reality, you misunderstand what's feasible and how long things take. Now, I want to talk about something that was significant this year and that continues to be significant: mobile home rent stabilization. We implemented a mobile home rent stabilization hearing officer, and on December 9th, we held our first hearing with that hearing officer, a hearing related to the Californian. Here's what I want to say, and I want to say it carefully. The hearing was long, it was detailed, it was fact-driven, and it followed a structured process. Now, the decision is still pending, and neutrality is still important because this is a quasi-judicial process. That means we respect the process and we let the hearing officer do the work. At the same time, I think it's fair to acknowledge something that was meaningful. The hearing went well for the residents in terms of process and participation. I was impressed with the resident representatives, Donna Johnson and Heather Carruthers. And I think after experiencing the hearing, residents saw the hearing officer as fair. And that matters because when people trust a process, even when they don't love every outcome, it reduces the temperature. It makes it more likely that people will engage constructively rather than cynically. So we'll await the decision and we'll continue to communicate clearly within the boundaries of what's appropriate. Now, development. This is always one of the most emotionally charged topics in Calimesa, and I understand why. Development shapes the future. It affects traffic, quality of life, open space, jobs, the city's financial structure, and it comes with big promises, some fulfilled, some delayed, some reimagined, some never realized. So I want to talk about development in a way that is honest and grounded without inflaming anxiety. First, some quick updates from the year. We worked on new development agreements with Quadro related to the industrial portion of the Oak Valley Town Center. We worked with Genesee related to Summerwind Ranch, focused on phasing timing, not adding homes. Oak Valley North is no longer moving forward. We continue to work through the Oak Valley Town Center performance bond saga. Summerwind Commons has had numerous challenges, and we are hopeful that the developer's new contract can get things back on track so Dutch Brothers can open, because it's just sitting out there by itself. We continue to work through challenges with the Stearns property where Oak Valley North was going to go and what it might become. We have early stage applications with Persit's Ranch, JP Ranch East, still early, still subject to change, and we have the Mesa Verde re-entitlement process underway. Now, let's look ahead, because a year in review should end with the future. First, the expansion of 4th Street Park. With the opening of the expansion, it will be renamed Mountain View Park. That's exciting because parks are one of those investments that everyone can feel. They improve quality of life immediately. They create places for families. They create places for kids, for community events. So that's something to look forward to. Next, the design and renovation of the future City Hall. Once escrow closes, we move from acquisition to planning. And I want to be clear, planning does matter. We want a building that serves residents well. We want a building that serves the organization well. We want a building that supports public meetings. We want a building that's efficient, functional, and future-oriented. Next, our strategic plan. This will be facilitated by Jacob Green and Associates. Strategic planning is where we step back and ask, what are our priorities? What are we trying to accomplish? What does success look like? How do we measure progress? How do we align resources with goals? That process matters because it helps ensure we're not just reaching, we're leading. Now, let's talk about infrastructure projects and timelines, specifically the Cherry Valley Boulevard interchange. Environmental clearance is completed, but funding and Caltrans approvals are key variables. We're applying for the TSEP grant. We're applying for a build grant. If we receive grants, grant agreements can still lag, and we can't start construction until those agreements are in place. Caltrans approvals are another wild card. And if we do not receive the grants, the timeline will stretch. So I want to be careful and realistic. Best case scenario is mid-2027 for construction to begin and it could be longer depending on grants and approvals. Also, the Cherry Valley interchange cannot be viewed in isolation. We need the missing ramps at Singleton completed. We need Roberts Road to reconnect to Singleton. These projects are related in how traffic flows, how access works, and how we sequence improvements responsibly. So when you hear timelines, I want you to hear realism, not hype, because nothing undermines trust faster than overpromising and under-delivering. We will push hard. We will pursue funding. We will do the work, but we also respect the reality of external approvals and funding cycles. Before I wrap up this year-end review, I want to take a moment to say something that I don't think gets said enough out loud. Everything I just talked about, the community events, the milestones, the projects, the progress, the day-to-day services that people rely on, all of that was done by a remarkably small team. This year, the city of Calimesa operated with 17 city employees, 8 part-time contract employees, and a 21-member fire department. That's it. When we take public safety and enterprise funds out of the mix, an apples-to-apples comparison, Beaumont has 145 employees. Yucaipa, 80. Calimesa has 17. And I want people to really hear that, because when you see a city event go smoothly, or you see a new system get launched, or you see a road project get managed, or you see a budget get balanced, it's easy to assume there must be some huge staff behind the scenes making it all happen. But the reality is, in local government, especially in a small city, most people wear multiple hats every single day. The same person who is managing a complicated project might also be helping coordinate an event. The same person who is dealing with a resident issue might also be preparing materials for a council meeting. The same people who are keeping core services running are also the ones stepping up to make sure Easter egg hunts, trunk or treat, food roundups, and holiday events actually happen. And they do it not because it's easy, but because they care. Now, it's more common than people think in government, but it's still impressive. It speaks volumes about the dedication and professionalism of our team. So to our staff, city employees, our contract team, our fire department, thank you. This year's accomplishments are your accomplishments, and I want the community to know that. And there's one more thank you I want to share, and that is a personal one. Because if you've never lived in the household of a city manager, it's hard to fully understand what it demands from the people around you. Being the spouse of a city manager is not easy. Being the child of a city manager is not easy. The late nights, the weekend work, the council meetings, the phone calls, the situations that come up unexpectedly, the fact that in many ways this job truly is 24/7. And yes, even this podcast, I'm proud of it, and I think it's important, but it still takes time. And that time comes from somewhere. It comes from evenings and weekends that could have been family time. And when you sign up for a role like this, your family understands the reality that it's a high-demand job, but understanding it doesn't make it effortless. It can still be a strain. It still requires patience. It still requires sacrifice. And I want to acknowledge that openly, because my ability to serve this city is not just about me showing up. It's also about the people at home giving me the space to do it, and sometimes carrying more than their fair share so I can keep up with the pace. So I want to say thank you to my wife, Jennifer, and to my children, Alex, Tony, and Jill. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your support. And thank you for the sacrifices you make that most people never see. A big part of this city's success this year is built on your willingness to share me with the community, and I don't take that for granted. So when I look back on the year, here's what I see. I see a city that gathered. I see a staff that worked hard. I see progress in modernization, like our permit portal. I see disciplined fiscal decision, like a balanced budget and strong fiscal health. I see public safety excellence, like a ISO Class 2 rating. I see business openings and community investments, like a new library. I see major steps forward, like a future City Hall acquisition that will improve service at public meetings. I see statewide advocacy that matters, like AB 1476 for senior meal programs. I see infrastructure progress, like County Line Road being functionally complete with one remaining segment to finish. I see complicated issues handled with process, like rent stabilization hearings that residents experience as fair and thorough, even while decisions remain pending. And I see a city at a turning point, because 35 years is a milestone, but it's also a reminder we're still growing up as a city. We're still defining what Calimesa becomes. And that future isn't decided by a single project or a single election or a single year. It's decided by thousands of decisions and the willingness of a community to stay engaged. So thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for holding us accountable. Thank you for showing up at events and meetings. Thank you for being a part of Calimesa. This is Calimesa, 35 years strong. We'll see you in 2026 on the Calimesa Insider Podcast.